All right. Hello, friends. This is Jessica. I am live on my social medias. And so I am just going to do just a quick little message about mental health and Christianity. And I thought that it would be an appropriate topic simply because um, there are a lot of people who still have like this stigma sort of situation against mental health, or they have just thoughts, questions, concerns. So if you have any thoughts, questions, or concerns about mental health in the Christian space, what that looks like, what that's supposed to look like, how it's supposed to like finish, how it's supposed to look, how it's supposed to feel, then that is what I'll be discussing tonight, just pretty briefly. Um, so I am a licensed professional, associate professional counselor, soon to be licensed professional counselor, and I am also a Christian. And so oftentimes I personally deal with like, well, how do I navigate conversations with people as a believer without pushing my beliefs? And that's something you just learn to do over time, being ethical at the same time. How what is my standpoint on mental health as a believer at the same time, because it can get pretty dicey. I remember being in grad school, and I am not a DSM person. So if you Diagnostic of Statistical Manual 5 is the edition, fifth edition that we're in, and it's the book that tells you all the diagnoses. It's kind of like how a doctor can go through and tell you what you're diagnosed with based on history and research and all these great things. So I have done that before with like reading and understanding and being able to clinically diagnose, and I can clinically diagnose. As a believer, personally, I choose not to unless necessary. And so, even with the students that I work with, I don't like diagnosing. It's the reason I didn't want to become a school psychologist, because I just think that there are some other things that we should focus on other than diagnosing. Do I believe that these diagnoses exist and like anxiety or depression, bipolar, or whatever is a real thing? Yes. As a believer, and every believer doesn't feel the same, this is Jessica speaking for herself. Um, I believe that a lot of the diagnoses are actually attacks and curses and demonic. Just to put it quite frankly, I don't think that everything is necessarily like, oh, well, we should just, they should take medicine and they should. I don't disagree with medication. I don't disagree with diagnosing. Let's be clear, I do practice from a clinical standpoint. I just personally, as a believer, don't think it's the first line of defense when it comes to being able to address a lot of the issues that people face. And in this world today, people talk about all the time how the rates of anxiety and depression increasing amongst young people, and it really does. You know why? Because the pressures of life increase as you get to that like young adult stage, and so then you have a lot of college students, high schoolers, and then early working people who cannot handle all the stress and pressure that comes with life. And a lot of times the reality is that our culture, our workplace culture tells us, oh, you should be able to do all these things. The reality is we can't keep up with the demand that life is putting, and we really should rest more. We really should say no more. We really should implement boundaries. And you just cannot do everything. And so the reason why we have so much anxiety is because we don't know how to do that. Because all of our lives, you go to school, you can't tell the teacher no, like this is too much work. Like you just got to keep doing the work. So at some point, we have to realize like we can say no, and we can turn down things, and we can say, you know what? That would cause me to have to stay up late, to have to sacrifice my sleep and my rest, my brain health, my body health in order to meet these demands. I cannot and will not, or I will not do that. I don't want to put that in jeopardy. As a society, I think we could live a simpler life. And I'm not trying to be like, oh, everybody go back to the farm. At the same time, if we knew how to grow some food and we could collectively like work together, we could live a more simplistic lifestyle without having to expect, oh, you got to be able to pay for this vacation, you got to be able to pay for this bag, you got to be able to buy this type of watch, this type of phone, drive this type of car. If we lived a more simplistic lifestyle where it's not as materialistic, we wouldn't have all these stresses and pressures, and we wouldn't have the rates of suicide the way it is, because the reality is, as a mental health professional, suicide rates are very alarming. I see it day in and day out in the school system where students are in crisis. They will literally cut their wrists and come to school and they want to tell me about it. And I'm not surprised, because that is the self-harm mechanism is a way of like releasing the anxiety, the pressure, and they don't know how to do it. So if people can go to the point where they want to self-mutilate in order to release this, don't we think as a society we ought to implement some things and prioritize mental health? So I don't come from the perspective as a believer that in order to prioritize mental health, I have to demonize my belief, my faith, my Christianity. I also don't think on the other end that Christians believers should demonize mental health because it is trying to provide a solution for what people don't have. But I do think that there is a way to merge the two, and that you can talk to people as a professional. If the kids go that route, I talk to them all the time about their faith, what types of things do they do to relax. Um, if they bring up the Bible, I bring up the Bible. What does the Bible say about that? And so, even for adults, there's a reason why I think it's in First Peter it says to cast all our cares on Him before, because He cares about us. We are not supposed to be worrying about day to day struggles. We're supposed to cast those cares to God, and He's supposed to take care of it. And so, even simple things like prayer and how we implement prayer in our day to day structure, we have to go back to those types of things, because as believers, if we're not doing it, then we're sacrificing our mental health when God has given us all of the ability, all the tools that we really need in order to have a positive mental health, stable, a peaceful mind, no matter what's going on in our surroundings. As a believer, we should have these things. And so it's really concerning when believers themselves don't even do what they need to do so that they can have the type of stable mental health, financial health, all these other areas of health too to consider. But the Bible is literally giving us wisdom. The Bible is literally telling us to rest, and that was last week's message about rest was so strong and important, because it literally gives us a day to rest. Those all of these like principles are important to our mental health, because we really don't realize how subtle stress is and how much it can build if we don't take moments to just breathe, moments to release, moments to worship, moments to have emotions, moments to just like whatever, is coming at us, to handle it, process it, move it out. So I just wanted to really address that, because I do think that there is a space for both to exist. Christians can go to counseling, counselors can be Christian, they can have conversation intimately about the Bible. Of course, it's going to be based on that person's like faith, how much they know. Um, as counselors, we don't really advise so much as much as we like listen to assess the problem, because I can listen to you all day talk about certain things, but I'm listening for the patterns in what you're saying. And so I can bring that. Do you hear yourself when you're saying that you're, let's say in my example, that you're tired all the time, or that you're people are treating you a certain way? Like, have you recognized that pattern? We're supposed to bring that to you to the forefront and have you look in the mirror to say like, oh wow, I didn't realize that about myself, so that you can make changes. So people can practice from a faith perspective. I would never want anybody, when it comes to believers, to feel like they can't go to counseling, and the counselors to feel like they can't be believers when they're sitting in a session with people. Whether I pray out loud for somebody, or in my mind for somebody, or I'm praying to the Holy Spirit to help me talk to this person that's sitting in front of me, then it's all space for it. But I would definitely caution people from jumping to, because we are such a mental health heavy culture. Don't immediately jump to the fact that, oh, I have a diagnosis, oh, I'm dealing with this, because we like to own these labels, and that's really not for us. We should not be owning labels. We shouldn't be just taking something on, almost wearing it across your forehead, wearing it as like a hat, talking about how anxious you are all the time, or how much depression you suffer from, or um, like whatever the illusions, hallucinations, just anything that you may deal with. I got ADHD. People love to say that one these days. So I can, I got attention issues. You're doing too many things at one time. Like sometimes we are overly analyzing how we're feeling, and we're calling it a disorder, and you don't probably actually have that disorder, or it's not as permanent as you like to think, because if you addressed it from a biblical standpoint and got some help with addressing it, you probably wouldn't deal with the same thing anymore. When you change your habits, it changes the outcome. People who have attention issues, sometimes if they have true what you would call ADHD, where you can actually see it like in their brain on a scan, if they eliminate the sugar from their diet and they practice doing one thing at a time, and that consistently will change their actual brain chemistry. So it's not as what it used to look like. So a lot of the things that we are allowing culture to tell us is actually helping us to wear these labels, and it's not a good look for us, because we never are learning how to like really address it, how to cope with it, and move forward with the stresses of life. And then on the other side of that, I think that we need to eliminate some of these stresses of life as much as possible. It is it is not a good path that we are on for the rates of suicide and the rates of anxiety and depression that young people, literally young people, are taking their lives from, to be the way that it is. They have all these like mental health hotlines, um, and those sort of help to address the problem, but it doesn't prevent it from existing. If we went back to doing some of our own work, where we are actually reading the Bible as believers and applying what it says, and reprioritizing some things in our life, and making sure that we have a good handle, and allowing peace to enter into our bodies, into our minds, allowing the peace of the Lord to surpass all understanding. If we are casting our cares upon Him, if we're praying, and we are literally having routines that help us to, manage life better, we would never get to the point where we actually feel like we are out of our minds. Because if you try to do this life without God, you're gonna be out your mind. That's a guarantee. But if you did this life with God, and you were actually honest about where you are, and actually attempting to get help, then there is no reason as to why you cannot succeed and thrive. To be honest with you, so basically, all I'm saying with this mental health and Christianity thing is that there is space for both. And don't let what you have heard from one side or the other dictate what you are willing to learn and experience on the other side. Because as a professional that has been practicing, I graduated from school in 2019. And so this is like going into 5 years. But really learning about it and implementing it way longer than that, there is really, really good space for both. And there's nothing ungodly about counseling. There is nothing ungodly about sitting with a therapist and being able to talk through things. There may be certain theories, approaches that are not the best, but allowing yourself to be labeled by somebody, allowing yourself to label yourself, and not really address the issues, is sort of like, oh, give me some medicine, doc, and let's get out of here kind of situation. That is not a godly approach to anything, even if you had diabetes. Like, that's not a godly approach. So, I want to encourage you all to figure out how those two marry and intermingle, and let me know in DM me if you have any questions, comments, or concerns. Share this video if it's helpful for you, if you think that somebody else who maybe needs therapy needs to consider some stuff and get out the stereotype out of their thinking. Thank y'all for joining, and I will see you next week around the 7 o'clock hour for another live. Have a great one.